I'm going to tell you a little bit about our speaker today. So Shannon Combs-Bennett is an award-winning author based out of Virginia. She lectures internationally on various genealogical topics, from basic methodology to genetic genealogy, which is what she's going to talk about this evening. She earned a BS in biology with an emphasis in human genetics from Indiana University, and she co-authored the DNA Guide for Adoptees. So she's currently a doctoral student at the University of Strathclyde in History and Genealogical Studies. So I'm very excited for her program this evening. So I'm going to disappear and let Shannon get started.
Thank you for having me here tonight. Talking about obviously one of my favorite subjects, DNA. MyHeritage is one of, it's not been around, you know, as long as Family Tree and things like that, but they are a wonderful research tool. They've coming along great with all of the extra tools for DNA. And I'm really happy to be able to explain some of those features to you tonight and show you how to, I guess, better use your resources and really dig in deep to the information if you've tested there. So we're going to do a very quick and dirty review of autosomal DNA, just because I want to make sure that we're all on the exact same page as we go forward today. I'm always asked about ethnicity, so I'm going to discuss a little bit why you might see different ethnicity results at MyHeritage in case you've tested at other places. Some of the features, how to use them with your genealogy, and of course some tips and tricks. And then we're going to use some of my DNA account to show you around and give you a really good tour and hands-on experience to how to use the website. So really quickly, so that everybody remembers, we kind of get our brains working on the DNA track tonight. So autosomal DNA is the DNA that you've inherited through your autosomal chromosomes. Okay, so that's the 50% from your father and the 50% from your mother, not including the X and the Y chromosome. Now, some companies do have information on the X chromosome, but not MyHeritage. Now, in general, you can be really confident in finding a match within the last 5 to 7 generations, about 200 years, depending on how long or short your generations are. This information can help you lead to some really good new leads in paper research, maybe help find some distant relatives you didn't know about who may have, you know, that long lost family Bible you're looking for. I know that's what I'm constantly looking for. And then, you know, cousin matches will also vary based on inheritance. And you have to remember when we go forward with this, that the number or the cousin match idea, there's a lot of different types of relationships that number could represent. So you need to pull out your thinking cap and look at a family tree and think, how could these people fall on this tree? How else could I be related to them? But what's important is, what is matching, right? That's the big thing that everybody asks about. Well, what do you mean I have a match? So our chromosomes, of course, go through what's called recombination when they're getting ready to be passed on. And that's where the 50% from your father and the 50% from your mother in the cell line up. And this is the way I explained it to my children where they were learning about human genetics in school, is they would give each other a great big hug. And when you came apart, they had exchanged information with each other, which is wonderful because that's what makes humans so unique. Every time we do this, we're going to pass down different DNA to our children. And unless you're an identical twin, no one is going to have 100% identical DNA to you. You can kind of think about it like shuffling a deck of cards. If you separate out the red and the black cards, each time you shuffle them together, you're going to get a different pattern. So when we say we're going to match somebody, these two first cousins have what we call an IBD segment, identical by descent. So if you look at them, that orange segment goes to their parents. It actually goes back to one of their grandfathers on this tree. That orange segment came down. Now, the brother and sister didn't share the exact same DNA from their father. Therefore, they passed down different DNA to their children. And those first cousins, they match, the common ancestor being their grandfather on that one segment. But of course, what else is important is that you realize that just because somebody is on your genealogical family tree, the further back in time you get, they may not be showing up currently on our genetic pedigree charts. And that doesn't mean that you don't have DNA in common with them and they are not related to you if they're not showing up. But what it means is the parts of the DNA that we're testing for at-home genetic genealogy kits, it's not picking it up. Because not the entire chromosome is tested, only portions of it that scientists have determined are genealogically significant, okay? So it's about, by the time you get to fourth cousins, about a quarter of your paper tree has fallen off of your genetic tree, according to these companies. So don't freak out if you can't find your cousins. They're still your cousins. It's just you may not have inherited the exact same segments, which is why, especially with autosomal DNA, we tell people that you should always test the oldest living members of a family first. Why is that? I always told my parents they are closer to the ancestor than I am, meaning they have more unmixed, undiluted DNA than I do. So I made sure to test my parents first if I could. And then if you don't have that option, try to test as many people in a generation as possible. So definitely sibling groups, first cousins, because you never know who has inherited what information from your common ancestor. Their siblings on average only share 50% identical DNA from their parents. Sometimes it's a little more, sometimes a little less, just depends on that recombination. So try to test those older members first. And then if you don't have any older members of the family, definitely try to do as many sibling or first cousin groups as you can. Okay, so real quickly, just a little check-in about ethnicity results, because somebody's going to ask me a question. It happens at every lecture I have. So ethnicity, specifically from autosomal DNA, can be described in 3 different ways. You may hear it called, obviously, ethnicity results, admixture, or even biogeographical estimates, depending on the literature you're reading, the lecture that you're giving, and that type of thing. But just never fear, it all means the same thing. But what's important is, with autosomal DNA ethnicity, it's only going to show the results for what you have inherited. So those markers may have been left on the cutting room floor, just like some of the other bits, which make you now no longer match your fourth cousin. Just remember, it's the same rules. So the further back in time, the less the markers you're going to have to compare to that ancestral homeland. Okay, so the other thing that you need to remember is that siblings can even have different genetic family trees for ethnicity. I tested my father and his brother and sister, and his brother and sister had identical ethnicity charts. And my father looked like he was adopted. He didn't match them at all. But I knew that they were related. They showed up as full siblings on all the DNA tests. But it's just he inherited different ethnicity markers than they did. So doesn't mean you're not related, even if you don't match ethnically. Okay, so these are my ethnicity results from MyHeritage. And I really like them because they give you nice big graphics. You can see on the one side over here at the very top, the genetic group's confidence level. Now that is a bar that you can make go high to low. Higher confidence, obviously they're a little more conservative in their estimates, and lower, they're going to be a little more liberal in those estimates. They're going to give you more information. I tend to leave it just at the middle there unless I'm really trying to zone in on something. Next, it tells you your percentages, and the little dots next to them correspond with the color cues on the map over here to the right-hand side. So for me, it has me at 50.9% Scandinavian, 21.8% Irish, Scottish, and Welsh, 19% Iberian, and then West Asian at 7%. So the other thing that they have are genetic groups, and genetic groups can really help when you're trying to figure out how you might be related to somebody, you can now look at the genetic group that you have in common with them at MyHeritage. And so, for example, here it says that I have Midwestern USA group number 2 and 9. I have another Midwestern there, Kentucky, Indiana, Illinois, and Missouri. This is what I should tell everybody. I'm from Southern Indiana. So if my accent periodically comes out, I'm sorry. Southern United States, Northeastern and Midwestern US, and then the England. And specifically, they've marked it down to Yorkshire. Now you can click on all those and it will give you information about those groups specifically. And for me, I love the way that I have very unique results here at MyHeritage. And I honestly think that is because MyHeritage is based out of Tel Aviv, and they marketed very heavily in the beginning to Jewish ancestry, Eastern European, Mediterranean ancestry, and it has evolved and expanded from there. But I do have at some of the other companies, it comes through with the Iberian Peninsula, Mediterranean, Spanish. I even have one that tells me that I'm Basque. And I will tell you a short little story about this, because some of these you have to think, for these ethnicities, you have to think about the social history of the parts of the world that your family is from. Now, for me, I don't have any paper genealogy that goes back to the Spain, Portugal, Basque, Mediterranean area. My entire family is majority Northern European, Germanic states, and British Isles on paper. And it took me actually taking a trip at Christmas time to Ireland with my family. And we were in Galway at Galway City Centre, and we went to the local museum there, and I was speaking with one of the docents and telling them about, this is where my most recent Irish immigrants came from. They settled in Southern Indiana. All we knew is that they were from Galway. And she said, when I told her, and I have this very weird Spanish and Mediterranean showing up, and she informed me that that made perfect sense, because there was over a 500-year trading with the Spanish and the Mediterranean, and that a majority of the people who currently lived in the city of Galway, especially in the Latin Quarter next to the Spanish Arch, still have Spanish ancestry running through them. Made total sense. So those are my second great grandparents who immigrated over. Of course, I would still have a pretty large percent. So social history, it's really important. Okay, so here's another one of my, genetic groups. So I looked at Midwestern USA number 2. And what it does is it shows you in the center there, that is the people who have my genetic makeup tend to be from those areas between 1900 and 1950, which once again makes total sense. My father's mother is Irish and German, and they settled in Du Bois and Davies County, Indiana. So that makes sense right there, those German and Irish settlers moving in. In addition, heavy British, but way back further than that. And you can see the top places that they lived: Kentucky, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and so on down. So if somebody has a match to you in this genetic group, it may be that you either come from the same areas, you could have some distant kin in common, but they are interesting to be able to help identify groups around the world. My husband has groups all the way in, I have lots in Europe, but he even has ones that are showing up from Australia, because his Welsh ancestry, they came to the US and to New Zealand and Australia from the same family line. Okay, so let's dive into the actual matches and start going through the DNA results here at MyHeritage. So this is the as of today. And I always have to preface that because you never know when an update is going to happen. But as of today, this is what the DNA match page for me looks like. I have 16,000 matches, and it shows relationships kind of as a bullseye with you there in the center. My close family, I was able to have my father test before he passed away. Unfortunately, I was not able to get my mother to test before she passed away. Then I have 10 extended family. And so those are first, second, and third cousins, and then 16,000 more distant relatives. So when I go into the DNA matches, this is the top chart with all of your different options. So let's go through these real quick, because they each, depending on what you're trying to do, you will have different reasons for clicking these different buttons. So tree details, okay? So you can search for people who have the theory of family relativity, which is a fairly new one. There was actually an email I was sent this morning saying that they were up 20% in usages and matches with it over the last year. So that's pretty exciting. It's growing. You want to look for people who have smart matches to you. So that's where you have matches that the computer has said, yes, you have the same people in your family tree. You want to look for shared surnames, which can help you, especially if you have no idea how you might be related to that person, or possibly you're doing research for a very specific surname. Shared places, that's another good one if you want to see who else could have lived in the same areas your ancestors were from. And then, of course, somebody who has a family tree. And if we keep moving over, the next one that you can sort by is relationships. Do you want to see only close, extended, or distant family relatives, or all of them? You can even sort it down to specific locations. So do you want to only look at people who have tested from the US? Or are you looking at another country? The ethnicities, and this is where it'll pull in all ethnicities or ethnicities that you have shown up already. So those ones that I read off to you, the Iberian, Scottish, Irish, Welsh, English, German, all of those would appear up here, and I could see who else in my match list share those ethnicities with me, as well as the genetic groups. So I want to find people who live in the same areas, or possibly were from ancestrally the same areas as me. So you can pick one of your genetic groups. What's even better is you can make labels. I like creating labels. I'm a very visual person. So having color coordinated family lines for me is important, because then I can just scan down my list and see, oh, without having to click on the person, that is from this side of my family. That is from this side of my family. So for me, I have obviously my favorite DNA matches. So people that I'm closely working with, or I'm trying to do more work with. And then I started out with primarily just my 4 grandparent lines. The warm colors, I made my mother's. So that would be the Armstrong and the Arvin family. And then for my father's side, I made cool colors, which would be the Brennan and the Combs family lines. You can also sort by shared DNA. Do you want to look for, do you have shared segments, large segments? Names, are they the most recently added? That can help you a lot. Most recent, I do that, especially if I haven't been in to my account for a little while. So I want the most recent to pop up first, so I don't have to go digging through and seeing who else is out there. And then the last one is ancestral surname or their name. So let's say you've made some notes and you know exactly who you want to go to. Hit the little magnifying glass button there and put their name or ancestral surname in, and it'll pull them right up for you. So a lot of different ways that you can start sorting and looking at your matches in different ways. So this is my third cousin, Greg. He did give me permission to use him as a guinea pig for my presentations, but we're going to follow him and my matches through everything on the match page, just so you kind of get an idea of what's out there. So first of all, this is the labels. So you can make notes, you can favor him, you can change the different colors. If you've set up labels, you can make your color labels there. I like the notes section because, you know, anytime I correspond with someone, or I learn something new, or they've sent me something, I can just pop a little note in there. So it's kind of like having your nice little research notebook on the computer in front of you. Now, right there in the center, this is information of how they think that he and I are related. But if you click on that, I'm going to show you this here in a minute, it will pull up a probabilities table with all the different ways you could possibly be related to your match. Now, this is information on the amount and the different ways you share DNA. Okay, you can click on the little question mark there and it will give you a pop-up with some information on how they determine the match quality. But it says that we share 1% DNA, which is approximately 67.1 centimorgans. Now you can take either of those numbers, and if you're interested, you can go over to DNA Painter and put it in the Shared Centimorgans project and see how it pulls up your information as well. And it tells me that my largest segment is 6 centimorgans with Greg, and my largest is 20.9 centimorgans. And then down here is the summary. So you don't have to click on in to see the tree, but this is the summary of what is going to appear before you click. The more information that is there, obviously the more information you're going to get from your match. And then if they have a tree, you can click on view tree there to see his tree that he's uploaded, and you can do some little pre-work on, do I know this person? Do I know some of these surnames? What is going on here? The other thing you can do is, like I was talking to you a little while ago, the theory of relativity. So this is the very first thing that pops up on the top of the DNA page. Now, this is just a theory because it's a theory and we're dependent upon user inputted family trees. Unless, I always say, unless you've taken the time to prove their line too, take it with a grain of salt. You never know, how good somebody is as a researcher. They might have missed somebody, they might have mistaken someone somewhere. So this is just a theory. However, if you think that it is, really good, you can confirm it. Okay, so here it says that our common ancestors are Josephus Sanders and Mary Ellen Wildman. And if you look, does it tell you? It actually tells me that I have 2 theory of relativity. So the second one, it's the same thing. This is path 2, but it's just broken out a little bit. So it's telling me that it thinks that there's that Josephus and Mary Ellen's daughter Isla is a 92% match to the Isla in my family tree, my great-grandmother, and that Hester Sanders is a 100% match to Greg's grandmother. And I would click confirm because I know this is correct. Greg is, and I see each other frequently at, family reunions over the years. But it gives you can go on. Sometimes you'll have 4 and 5 paths depending on how different you may be related. And you'll notice that this one, it also tells you over here, let me get my little laser pointer on. Over here, this is from my family tree. This is coming from Family Search. And then this is from Greg's tree on MyHeritage. So you can see where the sources are coming from. Okay. The other thing it's going to tell you are possible relationships. So it thinks that we're 3rd cousins. Okay. You could say that we are 2nd cousins 1 time removed. We kind of fall in that weird half part, right? Because if you go back, he would be 2nd cousins to my mother, and then I'm once removed. So that's pretty good. We're somewhere in here, 41 to 32%. That's still pretty good. But what I also like is, for those of you who like diagrams and visuals, and you're thinking, yeah, percentages are nice, you can click here for the show more relationships plus the diagram. And this is where it'll pop up. And so here you are. And then these are the different places that it thinks that you could fall on. Okay, so my parents' 2nd cousin, well, that makes total sense, right? Right there, 32.7% probability. That's where we are landing. As we go down the page on MyHeritage, it's going to come to the shared ancestral surnames. And we, believe it or not, I picked one of the easier relations that I have. So we don't run into a lot of different problems. He and I only share this one ancestral couple, the Wildman, Mary Ellen or Ella Wildman, and then Josephus Sanders. So these are the people from my tree. And then over here are the people he has in his tree. And actually Armistead there is Mary Ellen's father. You scroll down a little bit more. This is when it gets into the good stuff, right? The matches. Now the people are going to show up to you. You'll notice it's a little mixed up. It's not necessarily top to bottom, largest to smallest, but there is that sort by feature. So you can sort it that way. These are just people that it's almost by confidence level. Okay. Now, these people share DNA with me and with Greg. So these are people who have shared DNA. And typically, okay, if you share DNA with somebody, you have a common line. Okay. The only thing that you have to kind of keep in the back of your mind is that it's not a guarantee. It's the same family line. I could share DNA with this person here listed as a fourth cousin through my father, and Greg could share it, through my mother's family. Okay. They could be completely different reasons why, which makes these little marks off to the side that more important. So let's walk through this. So first of all, once again, you can come back to a label. You can see your color codes there. You can see your favorites. And then there's that little T right there. That's a family tree marker. So you can click on it and see their family tree. The triangulated segment is the important one. If you and a match on this list, that means Greg, I, and that person all share the same portion of DNA, the same segment, which you have to conclude, unless you prove otherwise, that you and this person and me and Greg all have a common ancestor. So for example, for this one, it's on chromosome 11 right here. Greg is the little red segment, okay, that he and this person, number one up here, match. And then yellow is the segment I share with the person. So she and I have a lot more DNA in common on chromosome 11 than Greg and I, but it looks like it's coming from the same person. The only real way to tell would be to actually look at the raw results, but we can make a fairly confident assumption that we share DNA on chromosome 11 from a common ancestor. Now, I can pull it up a little bit more, okay, and see how exactly, as we scroll down, all the different segments that Greg and I share in common, okay? Over here is the advanced options. And what's nice is it allows you to download this information as an Excel spreadsheet. I don't know about you, but I love, 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 love my Excel spreadsheets. People use Google Docs now and all sorts of other things, but spreadsheets are the way to a genetic genealogist's heart. You will learn to love them, I promise, if you don't already, because you can take this information and then make your own mini database where you can see exactly how you are related to somebody and to that other match. And then you can also take this information and upload it to DNA Painter if you're interested. So this is what the spreadsheet looks like. It shows my name, the match's name, what chromosome, and then start and end locations, as well as the centimorgans and the SNP ID numbers. So lots of really good information there that you can then do for further and deeper analysis of the DNA. Now, at the end, it's going to give us a little, this is who he is. We can contact him. It's just a little synopsis. I like to open up the note section, which is this little button here. And so for me on this, I put in the information in the note section, how Greg and I related. His grandmother and my maternal grandmother's mother were sisters. We have one set of common ancestors. So I favorited him because I want to come back and do more research with him. And I put him on the appropriate family dot for which grandparent unit I'm going to be looking at. Okay, so let's look at some more DNA tools that we have through MyHeritage, not just what you can find on that match sheet. So they do have a chromosome browser, a one-to-many, and you can select up to 7 DNA matches. Now I have 790 pages of DNA matches. So as you go through this, you should, do your stars, do the ones on specific families, because you're trying to, figure out how you're related to people, right? Some of these you may have no idea, you've never heard their name before. So using the process of triangulation, okay, where it's your DNA, somebody you know how you're related to, and then you compare it to a third person. So you're making a triangle and you're trying to figure out if that third person, if they share DNA with you and your known match. If they share DNA with you and your known match, you can narrow it down to a set or several sets, depending, of common ancestors. So for example, I'm going to compare myself to these 7 people. And my control, the person that I'm triangulating against, is Greg, right? I know he and I share DNA. Now for each of the different lines, so here's this orange line, she's right here, that's chromosome 11 from the first page. And then we have the yellow, we have that on 4, 7, and 16. A little bit of an overlap here with blue, which is this woman who I have at 4 and 14. We have green, who's way up here, and we have purple, who's here on 11, and that's it. So for me, what I'm interested in is, well, I have some overlap between Greg and the light blue here on chromosome 14, so that could be interesting to look at. I have a lot of overlap between Greg, orange, and purple here on chromosome 11. So much so where I'm pretty sure that orange and purple here are related because it's the exact same segment. Either it's a mother-daughter or sisters. That's what I'm going with. So, and then up here on 4, I have yellow right here and darker blue right here. I have a little bit of an overlap there. So I may want to, but they don't match Greg. So I got to figure out how we match, right? So those are the different things you can pull out of this information. So like I said, this person R and AN overlap. Maybe I have that full piece of DNA. See if I can find any more matches with them. So E and D, right, all share the same size. Maybe they share a surname, okay? Like I said, they're related. You can tell that's a very large piece of DNA to have in common with somebody. And they suggest 4th cousins, but I'm thinking we probably have several lines in common. Because that's the problem, especially if you're going to be dealing with pedigree collapse or endogamy, where you could have potentially multiple common family lines. It's going to play with where a person will fall on your chart, okay? So for example, I used to tease my mother that her family moved to Martin County, Indiana, and then they never left. It's like there was a solid divide. You couldn't cross it because everybody is related to everybody in that teeny tiny little farming area. And I got a hit several years ago from a man with the last name of Sanders. And he's also related to Greg here. And it shows up as a 1st, 2nd cousin. And I am an only grandchild. So I did some digging before I started calling up my mother's brothers going, okay, who had way too much fun in the 60s? Is there something we need to discuss? Because they were, married without children, as far as I knew. And what it turned out was I very quickly discovered that I and this gentleman had 2 family lines in common. So I contacted him. And he didn't know about those 2, but he knew about a 3rd. So now I have 3 family lines in common. We should have been third/fourth cousins, but because we had so much DNA and so much common DNA showing up on the chromosome browsers, okay, it bumped our estimates up higher. So we were a closer relationship. So you have to be careful, because now Joe and I now know that we have 5 family lines in common. Okay, so double third cousins, double fourth cousins, and fifth cousins. I wanted to make sure I wasn't getting one wrong. But yeah, so I mean, that just bumps up the amount of DNA you have in common with somebody. What's important though is that you can now go to each of these matches and do that download of Excel like we did with Greg a few slides back. And then you can have the start and stop information. You can really get down into the nitty gritty and down into the weeds, looking at exactly how you match these people. All right. Another really good tool is the auto clusters tool. Now this takes a little while. So if you've never done this before, you have to generate over here. You have to push the little generate button, and it is going to pull together all of your matches, which are all of these different dots over here. And it is going to pull them together into a readable graph, kind of like a matrix graph. If any of you have ever been over at Family Tree DNA and used their matrixing, you're going to get 3 files, the directions. It's always important to do README. You will have a CSV file, and the same information you can pull up on a website. So those are the 3 files that are going to be downloaded to you in a zip file. Now, what's important to remember is each cluster that it creates is what it thinks of as a different family unit or different set of ancestors. Like you all have the shared family, okay? These little gray dots out here in the wild blue yonder, that's where it couldn't quite figure out where to place them, okay? Starts with the biggest, and then it goes to the smallest. All right, so up here at the top, it says my cluster number 1 right there. I have 11 members in it. And then 10, 7, 6, 6, 5, 4, 3, all the way down, okay? And then you can look at the names. You have to zoom in a lot, trust me. You can go back and forth, find out who they are. Use this information to figure out how you're related using family trees, going and looking for more shared matches, and really diving in deep on how, especially if you've no idea, if you've never heard of these people before, how you could possibly be related. You could also see that information in chart form, okay? So this is the information for cluster number 3. Now for each cluster, you have the option of searching, okay? First of all, you can click on their name, whose names I've blacked out right here. You can click on the names to go to the match profile, and then you can go through all the different information, the smart matches, do you have anyone it triangulates, who it thinks your common ancestors are, and etc. The information here is how you can sort to find other, I mean, because it's going to be all on a great big page. You can use that information to find other information. If you're looking for specific segments, a person's specific name in common with, how many do you want to have? You know, how long do you want the segments to be? If you're looking for a specific cluster, okay? And if you want to search by people who have trees, like I don't want to see people who don't have trees. So I'm going to go for the, at first, right? You go for the easy, the low hanging fruit first, right? And then you come back to the ones that are going to make you work for it. And if you click on the person's number, it will take you to their family tree. Okay, so lots of really good information here. And you can also, of course, download this into an Excel spreadsheet, go back, compare, sort by centimorgans, sort by chromosome, see exactly how you match up to everybody. So real quick review. Now, unfortunately, MyHeritage only does autosomal DNA testing currently. Of course, that could always change in the future. But, you know, autosomal DNA testing right now seems to be the way most people are going in this field. So I'm going to stick with it for now, right? Now, it's nice that they do have full ethnicity groups and that you can then compare information between you and another person. You can learn about where the anthropological information about that area. Don't forget social history. Why did people move and why did people do things? That might explain why you have some weird, results showing up that you never thought of before. Highly encourage you to use labels, create your own color coding, and favorite them, make notes on the profiles. I used to think, now that I've gotten older, I know better, but I can remember everything. It won't be a problem. Yeah, sometimes I forget what I had for breakfast. So it's important to make notes. Even no one's going to see the notes. It's just to you, but it's to keep your memory going of why you're looking at this person and what you think about him. Don't forget the sort features. They can make your life a lot easier instead of just going through, like I said, I had 790 pages of matches. Sorting is my friend because there's not enough coffee or time in the day to go through all of those pages whenever I sit down. Use chromosome browsers or that Excel information, right? Really figure out, make a chart if you need to, if you want to have it all charted out on one thing, and start looking into how you're matching and then comparing trees. And I know it's scary. Some people don't like to do it, or they've reached out to people and never heard back. I waited 6 years once. Sometimes it just takes a little bit. But, see if they'll write you back. Say, hey, I see that we share this information, especially if you can't figure out how you might be related to them. If you know the DNA information, but you just don't have the family tree part, it may be they have their tree on a different site. One thing that you can do, and this is a hint because sometimes we researchers aren't necessarily original, and we use the same username on all of our sites. So, you might want to take their name and go see if you can find, if they don't have a tree on MyHeritage, see if they have a tree on Family Search or Ancestry or over at Family Tree DNA. You never know where that family tree could pop up. Heck, they could have a blog with a family tree on it. So sometimes you have to take the information from one site and then go think outside of the box just a little bit. Okay. And on that note, I wanted to make sure we had enough time for questions, because I know I always have quite a few.
There are questions in here.
Okay.
So let's see, I'll start from the top. Okay, can you please let us know which features are available for those that actually subscribe to MyHeritage and versus people who are just uploading their raw DNA from Ancestry DNA?
Majority of what you saw there was for subscribers. Unfortunately, it costs money to see that type of thing. But you can get like the general information, so you can see the relationships. You just necessarily can't go into the match itself. So you can't do the multiple people chromosome browser. I think you can still do the auto clusters off the top of my head, like some of those things, but you can't see the match itself.
So this person says that they're having a hard time figuring out from their half first cousin which grandparent they're related to.
Oh.
From the family tree that they have, this person sees names of grandparents, but they don't understand what they're looking at in relation to them. Do you have any advice?
So what I would try to do, and this may not help you, but the first thing I would do is I would see if I have anybody from that side of the family that you match, like from two separate sides, because you can do a little bit of trial and error. Do they match anybody from this grandparent line? Okay, no, let's go to the different grandparent line. Is it, and you can kind of go back and forth until you narrow it down one way or the other. And of course, wouldn't it be wonderful if, genetic testing was, I don't want to say that somebody's going to hate mail me, but wouldn't it be great if everybody did it?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, you kind of, when you're testing at a company, you're hoping, fingers crossed, that somebody from your family will also test there, which is the hard part. So if you're at MyHeritage, you just kind of have to wait around till somebody pops up, and then, just go back and every so often, check, monthly, every couple months.
Check after the holidays.
Yeah, after
Yeah.
sales. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. The next question, if you did a DNA test and you thought you had Native American ancestry, would that show in your result?
If it's recent, okay, so here's the thing with Native American ancestry, especially for most Americans, it seems to be at or over that 200-year from the tester limit, right? So we're talking like colonial, maybe early 1800s. And so it's just like anything else. If it's further back in time, you may not have inherited the markers to show up. Okay. But yes, if you do have it and you inherited those markers, if it's in your ancestry and you inherited the bits, it should show up. Yeah.
So there are a couple of people who are saying that when you're showing the filters, they were saying that their filters look different and some of their filters are missing. One person said that they don't have the ethnicities or genetic group filters and they have a subscription to MyHeritage. Yeah. My colleague said, you need to contact customer service and see if they can fix that, because that doesn't sound quite
because
right.
now I'm really gonna log in.
Another person had asked something kind of a similar vein. What does it mean if you get a no result, like even when you clear the filter under the theory of family relativity? So it's like they're all kind of similar questions regarding those filters.
So if you clear the filter under family relativities and you get no results, that means the AI can't figure out how you might be related.
Yeah.
So you guys don't either have the same surnames in common, or it could even be that you have one name and they have a different name, because sometimes you'll find one record with a name on it and they might have found a different record where they're the same person, but they're called different things. So the computer isn't smushing them.
I had something like that with my mother's DNA, and my mother's DNA, as my colleague Sarah Allen knows, is a dumpster fire for a lot of reasons. So it doesn't surprise me that it's just broken for her. So maybe it'll fix itself.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. I have the same 10th great grandparents 12 times, so we're good.
Yeah, we're fine here. Everything's fine.
Everything's fine.
But as far as like the filters not looking the same for people who have this paid account, that's strange.
That is very strange, because I did these slides a month ago and I double checked them yesterday, and this is the way it shows up on my account, and I have a full subscription. So I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Contact customer service, friends. Yeah. And see if there's something wrong. For those who don't have a subscription, would those filters look different?
They wouldn't be, because a lot of them wouldn't even exist. Yeah. Okay. And I should say, I am not a paid MyHeritage person, so tech support I'm no good at.
Yeah. Shannon is not a rep, just a user like us.
Yes.
Yeah. So this person said that in their results, it said that one person was an aunt, but this is actually a half aunt. So they rejected it, but they don't see a place to select that she's like a paternal half aunt. Is that something possible in MyHeritage? Because they namely use Ancestry, and you get a lot of relationship options with that. Is that something?
They're getting more and more. So right now it's these are the types that we're putting out. I mean, the half ones get kind of, they're not to that level yet. How about that? They're still building compared to Ancestry. Most people are still growing, right?
Yeah.
So as more people use, as more people test, those features should grow and develop. But yeah, they're the very standard answers right now. So that is definitely where something I would put it in, your notes, that how you're related.
Yeah.
You click no because it's not quite right, blah, blah, blah. That way, if it ever pops up in the future, you can see it, you can change it.
One person had actually said that they think that there's something wrong with the website today because they had a ton of theories of relativity and now nothing is showing. That is a good reminder. Anytime these websites, they're doing work on the back end, it gets glitchy. Okay, so this question, I'm not sure if I'm quite following this question. I'm going to be completely honest. This person had asked, autosomal, what exactly is missing with all of these tests? These tests are marketing, but don't clarify what they are missing.
Okay, so I think it goes back to when I said that it's not the full human genome. Okay, so because these companies want to keep the price on low, okay, I mean, when I started taking DNA tests, the autosomal test was about $500, and now it's 50, 19, 30, whatever the sale is right now. But to keep prices low, you can only do so much, okay? And full genome testing is several $1,000s. Maybe in 10 years, we'll be to the point where all of these companies are doing full genome testing and we can get really specific data out of it. But what they've done is they're only testing, the best way to describe it is, and if my genetics professor heard me saying this, he'd be rolling in his grave, is it's kind of like the X, right? For the chromosome. The parts at the ends of the X, those are the telomeres, and they kind of get used up. They're kind of, I don't want to say junk. They do have a purpose, but they're not significant for what we're studying. And then the part in the center where they come together, that's kind of the same thing. It has a purpose, but not for us. We're not interested in that information. So genealogical companies that are doing DNA tests, they're looking at basically the meaty part of each arm of the chromosome. So are you having data left on the cutting room floor? Yes. And each company has proprietary SNPs that they test for. Okay, that's why you get different results at different companies, because it's all being run against a different algorithm and a different chip. Okay, so that's what they're doing to keep the prices low. So yes, it's not the whole thing. You're not going to get 100% accurate information.
So you remember that half first cousin question, trying to figure out grandparents? Somebody had asked, would auto clusters help with that?
It could, because it would pull together people who match you and the first cousin and make a little picture for you. And then you could start there.
Somebody was asking, if your tree is private, will these tools for matching actually work?
They will at MyHeritage, because my tree is private at MyHeritage. So it's not going to show my information to somebody else, but it will pop up and compare it to another person whose tree is public.
Yeah.
Or who's given me permission to see.
This person said that they uploaded their DNA file to MyHeritage years ago, but they just took a MyHeritage test and got a paid subscription. Does that mean that there will be two of her? Yeah.
You'll have two accounts.
Well, my father accidentally did two ancestry tests. He forgot he did one, and then years later did another one. So, and I manage one of his accounts. So there's in his match results, there's always a second one of him, and it's like, this is your identical twin. No, it's literally the same person.
You may be able to call customer support, and they could merge the two accounts out and walk you through it. But yeah, there's gonna be two of you.
It gives me a little bit of chuckle though every time I see it.
Oh yeah.
This person said that they just realized that they have no matches in other countries, but on Ancestry they do. Is this something you've seen before?
Yeah, because once again, you never know who's going to test and where they're from. So Ancestry is the most popular company. They got a head start on a lot of people with a really good marketing campaign. So they have millions more of people testing there. But as MyHeritage grows, which it is, it's growing every single year, you'll see those change.
Final question.
Sure.
What is your personal logic for keeping your tree private? Are your ancestry trees also private? This person is just kind of interested in your personal rationale.
No, sure. So I do have a public tree, but my research tree I keep private because I learned very early on that people will link to any information, verified or not. So the tree that I'm researching from, it's like, you can ask me to see it and I'll say, sure, this is a working tree. Things are going to move. If you see an error or a question, let me know. But, you know, if people write to me, I'll give them access to it. I just don't want people to go, not that on a Sunday afternoon, I'm going to go, you know, tree hopping and go, oh, this is new information, when it might be completely wrong and I'm just working a theory.
You know, do you really want people to see your workspace? No.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't want to see my office right now.
Right. Exactly. Well, thank you, Shannon, for such a great program. For those of you who would like a copy of the chat, or if you have any additional questions, you know, feel free to send us an email. Our email is genealogy@acpl.info. I hope all of you enjoy the rest of your evening. And thank you again, Shannon.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.